Hello and welcome to part 2 of the full page workup, and we're just going to jump straight in, I reckon. And we've gone through the thumbnails. Hopefully you've watched that video, and we are now starting to do the layout, which is just the most basic, simple shapes. And right now I'm sort of staring at these panels, picturing what I want to put in them and just trying to estimate what the space I'll need. So I'm just marking it all up so I can always have easy reference. And you'll notice that I have 3 layers on there, plus a guide for my borders and another panel layer for my blacks, which is at a lower opacity. And this just means that everything is editable as I'm going along. And so right now, just putting the most basic simple shape. So you just sort of put 2 circles in the top one, just putting a cube into this one, changing it, and just putting together roughly the positions of all the elements of the panels. Nothing more complicated than that. So yeah, seems to be working. Trying out some different compositions. Don't think I go for that in the end. And going into the next one. Now, as you can see, that was so simple. You know, it's just not worth making it any more complicated. You want to make those simple shapes, because the step after this will be to put what I call a baffle over it, which is just like a white screen, which will allow me to start picking over the elements. Starting to add a little bit more detail so I know where I'm going. And I know that sort of panel 1 is going to be the one that's probably going to take the most time. So I think I'm going to concentrate on the other panels first. And you've seen me do this before when I drew the Farrago. It's just perspective rulers which allow me to just really quickly sort of knock these things up. When you're doing these kind of layouts at this small size, as you can see on the little sort of thumbnail at the top right, you can see how small it is. If you do the actual kind of technical drawing at this size, it just saves a lot of effort and just saves you a bit of work when you actually scale it up. So I always try, if there's any real technical drawing to do, I will try and do it at this stage, and then everything after that is just sort of like a bonus. And as you probably saw a few moments before, I put that white layer up, which blanked everything out. So now I'm going back over the panels and I am just making more detail, and I'm chopping out the bits of the layout as I go, just to quickly sort of construct the panel up. There we go. So once again, everything's about the way you position things against other things. I always look at a picture and think of it as elements that I'm trying to massage together. Here I am, I'm trying to like put a circle in that plane, and I'm doing it overly complicated, so I'm doing it now the simple way. Once again, it's always nice, you know, when it's worked out, when you use the perspective rulers and it actually fits within the circle. So I know I'm alright there. And though everything it's a bit rough actually, I'm only sort of eyeballing it mostly, it works. And that's the funny thing, you've probably heard the expressions, you've got to learn the rules before you can break them, and that's because when you do learn the rules, they actually start conspiring and telling you how to cheat them. And the eye can be really, really unforgiving when you don't look like you know what you're doing. But if you do, if you know how to like sort of strut around with confidence, it's actually incredibly forgiving, and it lets you off so many things. I don't really understand why, but I think it's just down to like practice and making everything feel like it belongs together. There's a fullness about a competent piece of illustration, I guess. Right, we're putting in the next element of this panel, and that's the debris field. Once again, everything just sort of in juxtaposition to everything else, creating a little bit of dynamism, making things feel, I don't know, just a little bit, pulling you in, a little bit more drama. And I think all these elements, as you'll probably see if you are, you know how layers work, they're all on separate layers, so they're all completely editable. And I'm just sort of sneaking up on what my final thing will be. And it's actually quite straightforward on this page. This page isn't like the most challenging, because things like all these elements coming together are difficult when you have people interacting with things, each other, fights and all that sort of stuff. And there are so many fights in this episode that actually returning to this first page and starting all over again is actually quite a nice place to be. So this episode is punching back at the moment. So the little thrust trail there, which is something sort of like from the original Proteus Vex that Henry Flint did, and I'm doing that on a separate layer again, so Jim has something to colour to. He can pick that line out with ease. Okay, so now we're starting to add the effect for around the sun, and this is what's going to probably give the picture a little bit more impact and drama, as these it ain't every day you see sort of like suns consuming each other. So just blocking out the space. And then cleaning up. This one's going to be a long one, this video, so you know, I hope you have something to drink. I've got a cup of tea by me right here. But I admire your commitment if you're going to see this one through. I think it's about 50 minutes. I don't think I can talk for 50 minutes. You know, I work on my own. I sit in a room all day by myself. Just doing this is weird. So interesting little point here. Doing the back of the Farrago there, it's black, and obviously that's against a black background, and that will work. But if you just use a little bit of white, don't have to be strong, just very light, it will just make that edge pop a little bit more, and just adds a little bit more atmosphere really. So you've always got to be looking for those little touches. You remember if I said in a previous video, as Henry Flint said to me, you know, black allows white and white allows black. So always be thinking about the contrasts, and like if there's a load of black there, bung a bit of white in, you know, and vice versa. So what am I doing here? Well, what have I done? Right, now adding a little bit more debris. There's going to be quite a bit on this page, so you may as well sort of start getting on top of it here. It's also a note to myself to say this debris is breaking into the black, And you've got all these elements here, and what you want to do is you want all the elements to break into the other elements. That's part of like how you massage these things together. Nothing sort of sits in its own little box. Alright, so I'm happy with the rough there, and I'm moving on to the next rough, and you're going to see me doing some figure work here, which is just very, very simple. I'm trying not to use too much construction these days. I'm trying to do it by feel, which is quite an odd thing for me to get over into words. Sometimes you can really feel the construction around someone's pick, and I'm trying to move away from that. I'm trying to make things feel like they're natural, like this is how they are, and this is how my world is. And though what I'm doing is very, very technical, this is sort of me noodling and feeling my way, sort of the arty bit of it, if you like. And I don't like being sort of talking arty-farty. This is illustration, this is sort of art that's about, just getting it done. I'm not sort of poncing about. But that, I am trying to sort of develop myself and the way I work. And once again, these figures are both on separate layers, so that they'll all be editable. And you can see I'm trying to feel that shape in my mind as I'm drawing that. And I can't really explain why I'm trying to do this. There's just something in me that's telling me this is how I have to do this now. This is sort of where I'm at. And a few weeks down the road I might realise that I've been completely talking out my arse, and I should go back to my constructions. But this feels right for me, and I'm really enjoying the results of it. So we'll keep going on it for a bit. So figures are starting to come together. I've got to do a big shout out for myself as well, remembering that Andrew has a robotic arm. I keep forgetting. The amount of times I've gone back while doing this and realising I've just drawn a normal arm is unbelievable. So just shifting their positions. So Vex has quite a lot of dialogue in this panel, so I'm sort of just shifting them over a little bit so there's plenty of room for it. I think I'm slightly moving them, adjusting them again. Yeah. Noodling. Okay. So I don't know if you saw the time I started this. I think it was just before 8 o'clock, which is actually quite late for me. I normally sort of I can be up between anything between 5 and 8. Get the dog walked and get this stuff started. So I actually started quite late today. So, but according to the clock on there, I've been at this for an hour. Just so you don't get confused and think that this speeded up stuff shows me being really sort of a demon artist, because I ain't. Probably stopping for cups of tea and everything. Just building out the cockpit of the Farrago. This is always always a bit of a challenge, because technology, particularly in the Farrago has a really unique shape sort of inside of it, and it can be quite a challenge to kind of make it look, how am I going to put this, engaging sort of thing. So right now everything is just planes, it's just simple planes which show the overall shape of things, and that's really the easiest way to do things. You just create the planes and then you build on top of those planes, and so planes are quite boring, but as long as people can understand that shape, sort of dotting bits over it and lines and stuff actually break down the plane, make it look a little bit less stark and more interesting. And what am I doing here? Must be adding a few extra details. Yep. So a bit on Vex's forearms. No idea what they are. Ask Henry Flint. But I think we established in the second one that they had controls in and communicators. Okay, so I'm now working on the planes of the cockpit, and I'm just adding what I would call points of interest. And they don't have to be very particularly detailed, but if you can stick things in, something for the eye to kind of rest on, you'll get pulled to these points of interest, and it's a bit like a magic trick where you're saying, look at this hand, when actually you're sort of like hiding, there ain't a lot else going on. So it's just a trick. So points of interest for the eyes to rest on. And I think it's quite important to say that you can go really busy on stuff like that, and sometimes that might be the point. You might be wanting to do something like that, but I don't know if you've ever seen like films like The Matrix, the sequels, and the stuff is so detailed that actually it all becomes quite unreadable. So it's really important to keep an image readable. Otherwise you're kind of failing at the most basic thing, which is storytelling. Once again, this bloody cockpit, it just changes all the time. And my excuse is, it's such a bizarre ship that probably bits pop up, go down, change all the time. So that's my excuse. But right now, what we don't want is that to become overpowering to the actual image. The point of the image are the two characters looking out the window. So that's always what your focus should be in. What is the point of this part? Just cleaning up. There we go, a little bit more tidying. And you see, it's not that much, but it just adds a bit of visual interest. And I think I have just put a load of those figs together. So everything is still, the figures are still editable, but everything else is snapped together. So I'm just now blocking them out. And at this stage, I don't think I'm going to be doing anything too detailed. There we go, I've just snapped those two all down, which means I'm now ready to go on to this. So I've been working now for about an hour and a half, and I think at this point I've actually had a break, had a cup of tea, and have come back up to do the main one. So we've got the two circles, which is telling me those are our suns, and now we're just building a debris field. You can see this stuff isn't complicated, it really isn't complicated. I'm just making sure that things kind of just once again move with the flow of the image. I apologise for all the sort of flipping that's going on, because I'm just constantly looking at it from other ways, just to keep my eye fresh and just tell me if it's working. And as mentioned in the previous video to this, I'm keeping plenty of space for those captions. Now, I originally thought I was going to do like a figure 8 with a load of layers over this, but as I'm doing this, I think I kind of realised, God, I really like the flow of how that works, and with everything going on, I think it's enough, and I'm feeling like there's a sort of level of energy that I think if you over twist it or anything like that, I think it just really muddy it up. So I'm sort of thinking I'm not going to do that at this point, but we'll keep going, and you never say never. But you have to sort of like, you're drawing this stuff on the fly, so you have to say, you've got to leave yourself open to ideas and happy accidents and all that sort of stuff, and sometimes you just got to run with it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you can only try. So blocking out. So there's a little bit of license going on here, so obviously you have two suns. You would not get that sort of level of light play, I don't think, on those objects at this sort of scale. They'd just be completely bleached out. It'd be a silhouette, if anything. But we're just having it's an arty moment, isn't it? It's arty. It's art. Okay, just adding a few notes to myself about the area around the sun, the effects. And now just building out more debris. Once again, the black allowing white. Just sort of making notes to myself that it's happening everywhere. And it's really, I think, quite important. Those two circles, they're obviously the focus in the background, so it's really important that we get things breaking that edge. And so the debris field is breaking that edge in order to sort of like it just makes it more interesting. It says it's not stuck in here. Right, so I'm adding detail over the top now, and these are the little robots, and I already know what these robots look like because I've drawn bin loads of the buggers in the following pages, and they're sort of a little bit spider-like, and they are sort of being fed by these other spider-like things that are bringing in big tanks that attach them, and they just like sort of like chew on the debris. Saving myself a bit of work, always good. And just adding these little things all over the place, notes to myself, and it's a bit of a, well, not nearly as intense, but it's a bit of a Where's Wally kind of thing, where we're not going full on, with it. I think in a page or two after this, we focus more on the robots in the debris field, but at this point, it's all about engaging. You want people to sort of look at it, hopefully sort of like get very drawn into it, and then like notice these little details, and then having that sort of curiosity rewarded further down. So it's all about continuing to pull people into the actual story. And here we go. So I've done my rough. We are now 2 hours in, and now I'm just popping in the gutters and borders, and once again it might look square but it isn't, which is obviously how Proteus effects go. So I've brought up the black, so the black is now hard, and now I'm on to weighting the image. And all line weight does is it kind of like it separates all the elements. And it was actually the last thing that I ever kind of learnt. And it was Matt Smith, the editor of 2000 AD, who sort of like kept banging on to me, this is what you need to do. And it took me ages to understand. But we got it. Anyway, I just did a, technically I guess you'd call it a Kirby crackle on those little edges. Is it a corona? Do we call it a corona around the sun? I can't remember. But on that corona, and now we're adding little eruptions, which just adds so much energy to that little effect. Once again, black allowing white, and it just adds so much more dynamism. It's far more exciting now and engaging, I think. But I don't get out much. And yeah, this is sort of what I mean about massaging the elements together. So it adds a nice kind of tonal sort of shift. It just makes everything just feel more settled. And now all those rough little blocks have to be shaped. And sometimes, you know, there's nothing more to it than just, as long as it looks like it's had a little bit of thought in it, the eye will forgive it. More debris. So much debris. Who knew a star system could create so much debris? And once again, we are changing the scale of our debris and making sure that some of it is breaking the edge of that sun. And you'll notice, and you'll see this, I do this so many times on everything. If you look closely at that circle that represents the sun, you'll see that the line is broken. And that is a really easy way to make the eye engage with an image. It draws the line for you, but in doing it, it kind of has to engage with the image. So, you know, a straight line or any kind of line is interesting, but you can do so many tricks with a line to actually make it more engaging. You know, you'd be surprised the difference a bit of line weight will do. Make it feel like the way light hits something, or you know, it's endlessly fascinating. Adding some stars, starting to really feel that that panel out. Just greying it out so I can see where they are. Just making sure that it hasn't actually bumped into any of the foreground elements. Now adding a bit of scuff to the Farrago. It's a bit beaten up at the moment. It's had some hasty repairs. Okay, and then you say, right, well, is that overpowering it? It's all about knocking things back or pulling them forward, and I think that's overpowered it a little bit, so we knock a bit back. And there you go. And now moving on to the next panel. And so we can see what our foreground elements are, which is the cockpit there. So we're going to go in heavy on that and like define our sort of our planes, I guess. There we go, simple quick textures. Instantly filling out that scary old white page. All things for the eye to kind of rest on. All tricks to make it sort of appear that there's more going on than there actually is. It's a magic trick. There we go. I'm going to knock out that heart, some of those lines as well. You can see instantly more interesting. There you go. Now we're on to the main pick. And if you've stuck with this so far, you know, congratulations. I couldn't be more impressed. You should reward yourself. Have a pause, have a little breather, have a cup of tea or something. Because we've still got, gosh, well over 10 minutes. And there was the time now when I was doing this is 12:31. So we've been 4.5 hours now. And I must admit, this is actually me working a lot faster than I normally would. I don't know if it's because I'm terrified because you've got you guys watching me, or I'm just because I've stepped back in this to get to this page. It's just a lot easier for me to find the marks I'm looking for. But either way, I couldn't be more happy because I was running a bit slow because this is a tough episode. So yeah, I'm just now defining and sharpening the debris field. Do you notice like the sort of distance and stuff like that? The debris, it's not like straight lines, it's sort of zigzaggy. You'll see more, I think, as it goes along, that they kind of like they get a kind of flow about them. There we go, getting nearer and nearer, just black and white. I do love doing black and white. I will at some point do a cover or a poster or something, do some colour work for you, but I do love doing black and white so much. There's just so much to learn, you know. I'm so lucky to do this. I hope like everyone always will have an opportunity to understand what it is to do something you love for a living. I truly encourage you to go for the stuff like that, you know. I mean, if you're interested, the thing for me that changed going from amateur to professional was simply the attitude. You know, I learnt to compromise. I learnt that sometimes you have to take baby steps into things, and you sometimes you don't get what you want straight away, so you have to be patient. You know, and if you're doing something you don't like and you want to work in art, for example, ask yourself, do I have to only be something? You know, will I only be happy being a comic artist? You know, for me, I said to myself, would I be happy working in a gallery, working at a picture framers, working in any area that sort of took me closer to the things I love? And it turned out, when I truly thought about it, the answer was yes. It just so happens that I was very lucky to get picked up as I was learning this attitude. And I strongly suggest you, if you want to pursue your dreams, then sometimes you just have to take baby steps. And you know, you should never take a step without kind of knowing how to step backward. So always try and think of a way to get there that, you know, you can step back from as well. There comes a point in any of these things where you think, God, I can't do both. I'm absolutely shattered. And that's when you have to make the really big decisions. But getting in, you know, that's just a question of attitude. You know, you learn very early on that, you know, find out what makes you happy, and you might be quite surprised actually how little it does take. I mean, I was lucky to sort of grow up quite poor, so to be able to like have a pen and a bit of paper was the thing that sort of got me where I am today, because pens and paper were cheap. You know, you've got to find your happiness. And my God, did I just sort of like ramble there. I do apologise. Back to what I'm doing. What am I doing? I'm adding more tone and texture and flow. Getting those elements together. So many elements. My God. I can't believe you guys are sticking with this. but I am super impressed. I did get a warning from my computer earlier saying that it's struggling, so I need to get this done and off this thing so I can get it back to being happy. So this will be going up very soon, I'm sure. Once again, using the trick, breaking the edge. Once again, it's all about sort of fooling you, engaging the eye. Now you could sort of say, well, actually, those little details I'm putting in there, they're not going with the flow of the rest of it, but they are sort of the larger circle. Imagine like you're being pulled toward the centre. So now it's become like a vanishing point, so things are coming out of it. So actually it does still work. And of course I'll probably now do some kind of mark that will completely make what I've just said nonsense. That's the problem with trying to remember what the hell I did. Okay. So I appear to have kind of started work from that panel from the top right. So now working my way down to the bottom left, which must mean I've nearly got all those elements sorted. I'll probably be adding a little bit more. I have a rule of thumb normally that I think I break here. That area I'm working on, I have this rule where if it starts looking muddy to me, and by muddy I mean just confusing, I will normally sort of either erase it, knock it out, and start fresh. Like I just did there, because it's not helping. If it's not helping, and I think people can sort of tell if you're sort of flanneling too much. Right. Cleaning and tidying up a few of the robots. And once again, it's a sort of, let's just say, a Where's Wally thing, where they're not staggeringly obvious, you know. But once again, a reward to the reader who notices them. Incidentally, for those of you who don't know regarding sort of line weight, there's a really simple trick you can do to see how a page is, or a panel, or a bit of artwork is working, if it's popping correctly. And if you wince at it, so you squint your eyes and you try and stare through the image, you will start seeing a sort of unfocused sort of black and white whatever, and that will show you if things are sitting quite comfortably. There's nothing too glaring. So give it a trick. Give it a try. It's a really handy trick. Adding stars. Realising that that's completely empty space there. Yeah, that's something. I don't think I'm very happy with that. That's corner. I don't know if I'll get time to sort that out, but I might have another look at it as I approach the end of doing this episode. And now we're adding the drama to the stars, adding those sort of eruptions again. And I think we'll be working our way around the edges of it. You see me there using something called a razor, which is a brush I made, which is creates the effect of like a scalpel on card. If you've ever seen that, where comic artists scrape out a little bit, and it's a really lovely textural sort of line that I like to use for stuff like this. But basically, when I'm using a smooth brush to do this, I'm actually just dithering my hand as I'm going around, so it's not giving me any even stroke. I'm sort of like changing the weight as I go through it, and that makes for just like a more interesting line. Once again, it's all just about making interesting lines, and they're just really simple techniques to doing stuff like that. Just practice, and you know, if you're drawing in a pad and you're thinking I'm not getting anywhere, well, try something different. Try a different pen. Try, you know, you'll be surprised how it might change. And yeah, we're getting sort of pretty close now, I think. So if you made it this far, my hat's off to you. This is the longest thing I think I'll ever do. I think we'll get back to some nice simple stuff and hopefully do some poster work a bit in the future. I'm going to be talking to some creators soon, Mike and Jim, and we'll see how it all goes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.